Hello, Senior 4. Welcome to a new class. This video belongs to class 16 in what we're going to learn some modal verbs. But first of all, let's try and see what is a modal verb, because this is a topic that sometimes might be a bit difficult to understand. But honestly, once you get it, it's very simple and very useful to create new messages. So the first interesting thing about this class is that you will find an explanation on what is a modal verb. A modal verb, or modal verbs in general, are a group of verbs in English that are special because they are always used with other action, and they come to the sentence to bring a new meaning, to give a new message. So basically, the first thing you have to know is that modal verbs are special because most of the time, 90% of the time, they are joined, they are together with other action, okay? And they have a meaning which they are going to add, to give to the action. So, breve repaso. Modal verbs es un grupo de verbos especiales en inglés que lo que hacen es darle un nuevo mensaje, agregarle un mensaje a la acción en una oración. So, basically, let's see here. Modal verbs add a message to the verb, and I wrote example here. I can play chess. In this sentence, the modal verb is can. If can isn't there, the sentence says, I play chess. That is an everyday action, there is nothing special about it. But when I add can before the verb, al poner can adelante del verbo, I am not only talking about the action, but I am saying that I have the ability of playing. Can is a modal verb that brings the message of ability. So, if I say I can play, I am talking about something I am able to do, algo que soy capaz de hacer, que puedo hacer. Can viene a traer el mensaje de habilidad. I have a couple more examples here. Let's see. I must do it now. Must, for example, gives the message of obligation. So this action, do, is an obligation for me. They will go soon. Will, a word that you know and we have already studied, is a modal verb. And yes, when it appears in the sentence before the verb, it gives the message of future. So, no es lo mismo decir they go soon que they will go soon. By now you know that will is a modal verb of future. She might come. You know might. Might brings the message of probability. So, I am not sure she is going to come. She might come, okay? Modal verb of probability. We should talk. We should talk. So here the modal verb is should. And this is one of the modal verbs we're going to learn today. Because should brings the meaning, the message of advice, consejo. When should and shouldn't appears on the sentence, we are talking about a piece of advice, sobre un consejo o una sugerencia. Lo que vamos a ver hoy son 3 modal verbs de ese grupo grande que existe en English to give advice messages, para dar consejos. So one of them, as I was saying, is should or shouldn't, the negative form, and I use it when I want to give my opinion about a situation, cuando quiero decir lo que creo que otra persona tendría, debería hacer. When I want to ask for advice, cuando quiero pedir un consejo, or when I want to give advice to myself, cuando quiero darme alguna especie de consejo a mí mismo. Let's see some examples. So, in the case of opinion, for example, I could say something like, you should take the job. If I am asking, I could say something like, should I travel? And if I am giving advice to myself, I could say something like, I should think about it. Good, so that is basically should. Then we have another one that it's very difficult to write but very easy to pronounce because it is called ought, like a long O with a T at the end. Ought to, and ought not to, plus of course infinitive. Every modal verb is followed by infinitives, ¿ok? Siempre que uso un modal verb, después la acción va en infinitive, o sea, sin ningún tiempo verbal. So, ought to and ought not to, we also use it for advice, but when we want to give a piece of advice that is more similar to an obligation, un consejo que tiene más idea de obligación que de consejo. Let's see an example. You ought to leave. You ought to leave. It's almost a te tenés que ir. Of course, I am being polite, amable, but I'm very clear that this is some kind of obligation. Es algún tipo de obligación. And the good news is that ought to is only used in the affirmative and the negative and not in the question form. And then the last one is called had better. Pequeño, acá hago un remark muy importante, siempre lo vamos a usar así, como si estuviese en el pasado. No tiene nada que ver con el pasado, es solo el nombre que le pusieron, así que nunca pongan have o has better. Siempre es had better, es su nombre, se llama así. So, had better affirmative, had better not, plus infinitive, porque estas dos palabras juntas de esa manera hacen un modal verb. Es así, un modal verb que también usamos para dar advice, consejo, but in situations in which we are demanding, estamos siendo demandantes, fuertes en nuestra opinión, or we are worried, cuando estamos preocupados, when we worry, cuando nos preocupamos por algo. For example, you had better study. This is a typical thing that a teacher could say. You had better study. Or you had better not go out during the pandemic, okay? We are giving advice, estamos dando un consejo, but we are being a little bit stronger, un poquito más duros con nuestro consejo. And another good news is that had better can be used in the affirmative, in the negative, but not in questions. For questions, we only can use should for advice. And then finally, at the very end of the explanation, you're going to find something that you know, but it is that when we use conditional number 2, remember for unreal situations, we can use a structure of the conditional to, una estructura en conditional to, una situación irreal, para dar consejos. Y tiene que ver con empatizar con la otra persona. It has to do with empathizing, with the other person, trying to understand the other person's situation, ponerse en el lugar de otro. So, conditional to, we can use it for advice, and the structure basically is, if I were you, unreal past, unreal situation, si fuera vos, claramente no lo soy, I would, and conditional, algo que yo haría. If I were you, I would go to the doctor, for example, okay? It's just like the phrase in Spanish, si estuviera en tu lugar, haría tal cosa. That is the same thing for advice with conditional to. So, modal verbs, verbs that add messages to an action. We studied modal verbs of advice, para consejo, should, ought to, and had better, and also to give advice, we studied conditional to structure, if I were you, I would. Keep on working as well as usual, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!